So I'm here with Tom. Tom, do you want to just introduce yourself and a bit of background to the company?
Sure. So I'm Tom Haczewski. I run a company called The User Story. We are a product design, research, and strategy firm. We've been going for about 7 years, and basically we work with all sorts of different companies, but basically digital products. So we work with startups that don't have anything, and we're helping them to sort of see what the vision is and how they're going to get this into market and produce their MVP and start to scale it out right the way up to big multinational, well-established products.
How big is the team? I mean, you've been around 7 years. Are you relatively small and nimble? Are you quite big?
7 years, 7 people. So we're up to 7 people. It's not quite been as one person per year, but roughly that, yeah. The size of projects, I mean, we tend to work with all sorts of different things, really. So we're quite lean and quite agile, and we're very sort of tight with what we actually do. So we don't tend to do anything outside of product strategy and design and research. So anything marketing focused or sort of SEO, PPC, web design, all that kind of stuff, we just don't touch. We don't even do development in-house either. So it's really, really tight.
So you stick in your swim lane, very lean, very focused. And I would guess say no or no, but we know somebody who does quite a lot.
That's exactly it. We play really nicely with lots of other companies. So, yeah. If anybody ever needs anything, and we know who to put them in touch with. Yeah, we'd much rather partner with really, really good people than try and do everything ourselves.
The big question, I guess, is, from your point of view, just thinking back across 7 years that you've been in business, like what would you define as the single biggest mistake that you think was made either by you or by the business? I guess, I'm talking to a lot of founders, so by proxy, actually, it is by you. But what's the biggest mistake that you felt over that time?
It's a really interesting question. Every business makes mistakes, and I think mistakes are only big mistakes if you don't learn from them. And I think we've been really lucky, actually, that anytime we've gone a bit wrong, we've been able to look at what we did, reassess it, do something different next time. Mm-hmm. So we don't really have any major mistakes that we've made over the last 7 years that have set us astray or sort of put any massive pressure on the business. But one thing I think we definitely did do wrong was in hiring. So I think this is one of the things, I don't really consider myself to be a business owner. I do what I do, which is user experience and product design. And I happen to run a company with different people in it. Like that's what I do. I think a lot of people find that's where they find themselves. They start doing something they love and they end up running a company. It's not really something they meant to do. I'm definitely one of those people. I think because of that, a lot of those things that come with running a company are the things that I don't understand. I don't really know how to do, and I've had to learn them over time. So in that, I've made lots of mistakes and I've had to recalibrate as I've gone along. But hiring is one of those things that I think you have to get right, and if you get it wrong, the impact is much more than just that person. The impact of that person's attitude or the way that they approach their work or the mistakes that they make or whatever, even if it's just the wrong fit for the company and all those sorts of things, that impact stretches much wider than just that person. It affects everyone else in the team. It obviously can affect your bottom line. It affects your clients. The entire dynamic of the company can just change. And so I think that's where we've made big mistakes. And I can think back to, 1 or 2 instances where we were just in a bit of a panic because we knew we had too much work coming up, and, we'd said yes to a few too many things, and we just needed to have someone in the door. And rather than go out and find a freelancer or something like that, we thought, no, we want to build a sustainable company. We want to have people on board who really believe in what we do, believe in the values of the company, and we want to find someone that that will stick with us. And so I think that is fine, but when you're also under pressure to try and get work out the door, some of those decisions that you make in hiring are then rushed. And I think we've definitely done that once or twice where we've brought people in and they just weren't right. We've done it because we needed them in, because we just needed stuff to be done. They were completely wrong for the company. That impact was felt pretty wide. I mean, it affected morale across the whole team. We had people who were, pretty upset actually at stages because they just didn't share the values that other people shared. They didn't collaborate very well, or they didn't, they didn't really push themselves or push other people or really understand how to work in the team. They were perhaps a little bit more junior, those sorts of things. So yeah, I think that's definitely probably one of the biggest mistakes we've made. I'd like to think I've learned a lot since then, but
well, I was going to say it's interesting what you say, because I see this a lot in agency scaling and org structures. But one of the things that you mentioned, and I kind of got what you were saying, especially in a small team, that genetic makeup, that fit of a person can completely disrupt a business or not. But the other interesting thing that you kind of said as you went along was, it was down to demand. So you had a supply demand challenge. And I'm guessing there were a lot of plates spinning, which made that mistake or risk even worse, because you needed somebody to hit the ground running, not only that would fit in the team and understand the ways of working and know how to do their job, but actually be able to grasp a project or get involved as one of the resource pool and get on with it. So it's almost like you had a double whammy, that challenge of finding a person that's a good fit normally. But then when you've got that 11th hour clock ticking, it makes it even worse, because everybody's naturally stressed anyway. And then suddenly you've got this kind of bad apple, I guess, and it creates a real problem.
Yeah. And it's not their fault. If they've come into the team because you've hired them, it's your fault. Like you've made that hiring decision, and they might not be right for the team, but you've decided they are, and all that sort of stuff. So it's not really their fault. But yeah, the impact that they have, again, like I say, it's so wide. It's not just the team even. And, you imagine the impact on those people when they realize, actually, this person is just not getting this. They're not pulling their weight, or they don't understand, or they can't learn, or whatever, whatever the issue you have, that one team member affects the work, but it also affects those people who then have to put in extra time or extra work on training that person, or on, actually redoing work, or having to pick up projects that they weren't expecting. So yeah, I mean, it's just so devastating if you get it wrong. But it's also one of those things that people don't really teach. It's not something that I was ever taught. I don't know how to hire. I've had to learn how to hire, because it's not something that you're really ever taught. And, there's not really any good articles about this either. I don't think there's not, there's not much you can read about hiring really, really good people, because it's mostly sound bites. It's mostly stuff that people say, which is very aspirational, but actually, unless you have lots of really good stuff in your business already. So, one of the things that we are really good at actually at the User Story is our culture, and it's all based around 4 values. And those actually we should have built into our hiring process. And we realize that once we've made these mistakes. But you have to kind of trial and error these things. You have to almost go through those mistakes before you realize, okay, we should have brought that forward. We should actually, when we were interviewing people, when we were talking to people, we should actually have been looking at our values and seeing how much they were reflecting those values. Yeah.
So, I mean, aside from the likely impact on the business, the impact on the projects, client relationships within the team itself, that kind of fractiousness of, oh God, I've got to, help this person, or I've got to do this person's work on top of my work and all the rest. From the point of view of a business owner, what impact did it have on you as well for that period? I suppose business and personally, was it a very stressful time trying to deal with that?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think that obviously there's business impacts of, the work that's having to be picked up. That you're having to re-coordinate other people. You also probably have to rehire or find someone else to help sort of plug the gap. There's a big monetary aspect to this as well. If most companies aren't running with absolutely massive budgets when they're at our size of sort of 5 to 7 people. If you make a hiring decision and you've got a set amount of money to hire that person, you really want that to work out, because that's money you can't really afford to just spend on someone for 6 months only for it to not go anywhere. So that is never good. I mean, from a personal perspective as well, I feel this very viscerally in myself. I mean, I want everyone to do well at the User Story. We have, like I say, really good culture, and we also provide lots of autonomy to people. So we provide a good environment for people to do their best. And I really feel it when people don't, they're not able to do that, or they just don't fit us very well, I feel like that's a decision that has fallen to me and I've made it incorrectly. I feel like either I should have gone with my gut and I didn't. And, that has happened many times where I thought, yeah, that just wasn't a good decision. I made it based on a brain thing rather than a sort of in my gut thing. Yeah. And it's not worked out well. So I feel that very personally. And certainly over the last 2 years, when you've got this sort of the pressure of things like the cost of living rising and the pandemic, obviously over the last couple of years, business owners have had huge amounts of pressure anyway. So when actually things like this go wrong, it's just compounding. And the sort of impact on your mental health, I think, as a business owner is just enormous. Because to think that you've then got to, another problem to deal with, and it's a significant issue. It's just exhausting. So I felt it pretty heavily. And it was stressful. Yeah,
it is tricky, isn't it? Because it's not like, some of our gear's going out of date, we're going to go and buy some new hardware, or we're going to change some of the ways of working that we've got. It's a personal thing. And as you say, as human beings, we're all dealing with the journey that we're on and the situations that we're put in. But when you have somebody that struggles or is a bad fit for whatever reason, it kind of feels like a little bit of a drawn out drowning process. And you got to take responsibility as the owner for actually having that situation, but you're dealing with another human being, and that's difficult.
That's absolutely it. Yeah, I could completely agree. And I think, business owners don't cut ourselves enough slack, to be perfectly honest, because, when you're dealing with a computer that's broken, you can go into a MacBook shop or, an Apple store and pick up a new MacBook like that. And it's fine. Yeah. You understand how that thing works. It's very mechanical. Human beings are bags of squishy meat and electrical impulses and chemicals. They're impossible to work out because every single bag of chemicals and electrical impulses that you get in front of you is different. They all work differently. They all have things that inspire them and motivate them and frustrate them. And, you have to somehow be able to understand that very, very quickly and understand whether you're going to be able to deal with that bag of meat for the next 3 to 5 years, potentially, or much longer. And so I think that's really difficult when, choosing friends takes a while sometimes, and all that kind of stuff. And you've got to work with these people for a long time. It's really difficult. And I think business owners, we need to cut ourselves a bit more slack. This stuff is difficult. Sometimes you are going to make those mistakes. I think just trying to reduce the risk in knowing what actually matters when you're hiring people. And a lot of that is going to be what is the fit? What is their, do their values match your values? Do they understand what the company is trying to do? Do you feel like they're going to be motivated working with you? And do they get your message and all those sorts of things? Actually, if you can get that stuff right, then actually the other conversations around skills and stuff are much easier. It's that sort of squishy emotion stuff that's quite tricky.
Yeah, I agree. I think the technical skills, depending on the level at which somebody's coming into a company and whether you've got, some kind of training program, apprenticeship, shadow system, whatever, a lot of the stuff, some of the fundamentals you would need for certain roles, but a lot of the technical stuff, a lot of the, kind of producer technician stuff are actually things that can be trained up into people. The softer stuff, how they were, how they grew up, how they experience the world, how they interact with people, their personalities, their behaviors, their traits, their, upsides and downsides. Those are much harder, softer, non-tangible things to try and deal with. So with that kind of mistake hitting you, what was the solution? I'm assuming now from what you've said that you kind of adjusted to that, but now you have a more robust process in place for future hire?
Yeah, we do. So I think we realized that we were hiring based on what we reckoned they could do rather than who we reckoned they were. And so now we actually have our values as part of our hiring process. So our values are really important to us anyway. We built them into most aspects of the business. So anytime we have a catch up with anyone on a sort of one-to-one or a quarterly review or anything like that, the values are a really big part of that. We assess people's performance on them. We also give people high fives, sort of virtual high fives and stuff based on their, sort of behaviors and things that sort of reflect the values. we've built that into our hiring process. So as part of the initial assessments, when we're looking at new people, we look at whether or not they meet our values. We look at evidence that they can provide that shows that they get what the values are, but also they live them and they believe them. It's a little bit trickier because it's not like, here's a coding test, or here is, how would you do this bit of marketing? We're actually asking, how do you learn? How do you work within a team? What's actually important to you when you're working in a team? Those quite tricky questions, but they're designed to assess those values. The other thing we do is we don't reactively hire. So we're now proactively hiring when we're not actually looking for people. What we want to do is just speak to people in the industry. It's quite a difficult industry for us to hire in anyway, because there aren't many people, particularly in the area. I mean, we're based in Norwich. We like to have people around sort of geographically relatively close, because it's nice to meet people every now and again, even though we're remote first. So yeah, it's quite tricky for us to hire people anyway, because not many people have really done product design or strategy, those sorts of things. But we are going out and we're just talking to people about, whether in the future this might be a place they might like to work, and we're talking to them about the sorts of things they've done and how they do it, and we're tracking them as they're sort of working in other companies, and we want to see where they go and what sort of work they do. So it's much more proactive, it's much more conversation based. Everybody in the team is sort of doing that as well. If they've spotted someone at a networking event, or someone that they've talked to, maybe a friend of a friend, they might say, oh, actually, yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear about what you're up. And it's just to learn more about how they work. So when we do have a role in 6, 8, 12 months, we can bring them and say that we've got the role for you here. We know that you're the right person for us. You get us, we get you, just come and work for us. So I think that, and that's helped us hire the last 3 people, I think, that we have come into the team. So.
I think there's a genius approach. I mean, there's a double whammy in that, I guess. One around the kind of, knowing your culture, knowing the fit, knowing what you want that genetic makeup to be. Yeah. The second one is that constant matchmaker thing. I think the worst place that agencies can be is, oh crap, we've got a client that's going to pay us, $250,000 to do this project. We're missing 3 developers and 2 designers and blah, blah, blah. And we start on Monday, right? That like instantly the pressure is on to try and find people. And chances are you're not going to find them easily. You're going to either cut corners or get stressed and all the rest. It's just a horrible experience. So that thing of just constantly being in communication with people that are moving in the industry, or maybe people that are just starting out, that in a year's time might be an interesting place. But having the time to establish the relationship, getting to know the person before the skills is a huge one. I think that's a very, very clever way of actually molding a really good, solid team.
And the nice flip side is you get to meet people in other companies that are doing cool stuff. And, we're very collaborative with other companies. And I think most companies know that people in their teams are going to move. They're going to move to other teams. You're going to get people from other teams come to you. That's just the nature of the sorts of work that we do, right? That's just the industry. So I think that kind of, it still works and it's still okay. But yeah, I think it's nice because you're out in the community. You sort of have a rough idea of what people are working on. You're just meeting nice people. So it's a good thing to do anyway.
What advice would you have given yourself back then to ideally have avoided the mistake in the first place?
Great question. So, I know this one. This is easy. So it took us 5 years to actually write our values down and then start doing something with it. We roughly knew what our values were. When we did our values workshop, I'd planned a whole 2-hour thing and we were going to post it, know all this stuff and all this kind of stuff. We'd done it in half an hour because everyone just went, oh, well, these are what I believe our values are. We stuck them all together, found 4 and went, well, that's it. Everyone was already in the team who lived the values. And that was kind of great because it showed that we knew that we were roughly living them anyway, but we should have formalized that so much earlier. So I tell people, if you're starting a business, first 3 months to get your values down, really get down what you believe, what drives you, what motivates you, what the company believes, what everyone in that company is pushing towards and what you all should be collectively doing. If you get that down day one, build that into your hiring process, you won't have a problem, because that is what drives you in everything. But it should also be what the people that come to join your company will drive as well. So yeah, I would absolutely go back. I'd have formalized that first day, done, easy, no problem.
Yeah. Where can people find out more about you?
So we're online at theuserstory.com. I am the Hacksaw on Twitter, because obviously my last name is Haczewski, and no one can ever say that. So
I didn't even try. You noticed?
I noticed.
Tom. Yeah,
I noticed.
Sorry,
but yeah, that's fine. I don't blame you. But yeah, so I'm the Hacksaw on Twitter, or the User Story. Basically, search for the User Story, and you'll find us online.
Brilliant. And yeah, once this video goes out as well, I'll drop a link to your various handles. Tom, thanks so much for your time. It's been an amazing session. I hope people have found it useful. Watch out for the next one coming out soon.